Hello, my name is Ryan Sedlacek, and for my Metaskill challenge, I did baking. And in the background of this video, you'll see me baking my first thing I ever baked with the challenge, which is the pumpkin snickerdoodle cookies. And then you'll also see the most recent thing I just baked, which was bread for a little Halloween charcuterie board me and my friends did. So I never really was that into cooking and baking, but I've always wanted to bake. Like I've always thought it'd be such a cool skill to have. My mother was never really into baking herself. She was more into cooking, but still I really just wanted to bake. And so when the Metaskill challenge rolled around, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to try to learn how to bake. And as I got into it, it was really nice just whenever I would bake something and I'd share it with my friends and the people around me. It was just so nice seeing everyone be so happy and just fulfilled from the stuff I was creating. And it really gave me this sense of motivation to keep going. And at a certain point, and it was just very relaxing just to get down there and just, if I was making bread, just, get all the ingredients together, start kneading the dough, start, just making cookie dough. It was nice just having these options. Now, barriers wise, getting into it, the main barrier was the cost to get into it, as well as a very steep learning curve, a lot of the initial techniques type stuff. Learning curve wise, it was really just basic stuff. I had no clue how to knead dough. I had no clue, for making cookies, how big should the cookie dough balls actually be before I put them in the oven? How long is too long to bake something? And thankfully with baking, it's a lot more of just following recipes as you're trying to learn and what you're doing. So it did help a lot, but it still was that learning curve of just not knowing what to do. And one main issue I faced was I wanted to go off the recipe more than I should. I was like, oh, I'll make this original and make it my own, when I really could not do that. And it led to one or two mishaps here and there, but I just kind of went with it and just adapted over time and learned, okay, I just need to stick to the recipe. Once I'm really experienced, I can start making my own or modifying, but right now, just kind of figure out what the heck I'm even doing in the first place. I also hit a wall of motivation about halfway through, just from a combination of just midterm season starting, and then I had two cookie dough recipes that just ended up. One of them was the balls didn't fully flatten out, and one of them was just really bad sugar cookies. Just because again, I tried to do my own thing, and I hit that wall, and it was just hard for me to keep going. But I just kind of thought this isn't really failed because one, it's edible. I'll eat it or someone else will eat it. And two, I'll learn, I'll improve, I'll get better, just take a step back, think about what I want to do. I had thankfully I had a book that my mother actually shipped to me from our house of cookie dough recipes. So I could always just look through that and get some inspiration if I needed to take a step back and just figure it out. Now, in terms of the 80-20 rule and deep practice, the 80-20 rule really came in value with a lot of the core techniques I learned, because I did a lot of bread. I made a lot of bread, made a lot of cookies. So I really took that 80% of my focus towards how to knead bread, what how to know when something is done in the oven, and even basic things like separating wet and dry ingredients before mixing them together. Just very key skills. And then the other 20%, which was just my other stuff that didn't really contribute as much, was more the specific things for each recipe. I was doing pumpkin snickerdoodle cookie, the specific things for that. Oh, how does if I'm using pumpkin puree, how does that affect the recipe, and how does that change my ratio of wet to dry? Just stuff like that. And then deep practice really just came from, in my head, what's the progression of baked items. Banana bread, super easy to make, one of the first things I did. Cookies, pretty simple to make, but I kept trying to push it into more complicated things, and eventually I got to bread, which in my head was pretty complicated. Once I was comfortable with making cookies, I'm okay, I can start making bread, just make basic bread. So I did just basic artisan bread, and I said I'll push it a little further. I'll make garlic bread, put garlic and other ingredients into it, and see how that affects it. At some point I made challah bread with a friend, which also pushed it. So just doing these more advanced recipes really pushed my skills, and also just trying to challenge myself to say, okay, here's what the dough is like right now. What would I need to add more of or take some out of in order to make it better? Like at a certain point towards the very end, I was able to tell dough is too wet. I need to add in more flour, or else it's just not going to be good. Or, oh, this is going to be too thick. I need to separate it into separate loaves. Like I started to gain those skills just from being able to focus on very specific parts of baking that were just on the cusp of my ability. So in all, this entire experience really has given me the motivation to learn new skills. I never really thought I'd be able to learn how to bake this easily just in these 10 hours. And it really has pushed me to think, wow, I can learn other skills like this without it being too difficult. And it really helped me discover a new part of myself, because I never really was someone who was good with my hands and with making stuff. So having a skill like baking, where I'm, using my hands, making food out of nothing, it really is amazing. And overall, I'm thankful for this entire Metaskill challenge to be able to help me branch out. So again, thank you very much. I just
Do I need a video of you as well?
No, we're good, Nick.
Bread.
Unless you want to.
Welcome.
Thank you. That's all I needed.
I'm only here for like 20 minutes. We're cheering. That's okay. We're getting things set up right now. Nothing is
You can take it
back cooking.
She should get part, but she's not.